If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching us from. We continue. The city of London awoke under the timid sun of a June morning, its avenues already congested and filled with the characteristic noise of a metropolis that never stops. High atop one of the most imposing skyscrapers in the Canary Wharf district, Raphael Alistair observed the landscape through the glass windows of his penthouse apartment. He was 38 years old, but in the last two, he felt as if he had aged an entire decade. His brown eyes, once bright and full of energy, now carried the weight of a responsibility he never imagined he would have to bear alone. Raphael was the founder and CEO of TechVision, a technology company that had revolutionized the British market for business solutions. He started the company at 25, with just one partner and a rented office in the city centre. 13 years later, he commanded £1 billion empire with over 2,000 employees and clients spread throughout the country. But no professional achievement, no innovation award or international recognition could fill the void that had resided in his chest. Since that fateful day 2 years ago, Camilla, his wife, the love of his life, the mother of his daughters, she had passed away unexpectedly, leaving Raphael utterly lost. They had met in university. She studied architecture while he delved into the world of programming. Camilla was everything Raphael was not: spontaneous, artistic, a dreamer. She saw beauty where he saw only codes and numbers. Together, they formed a perfect balance. They married at 26, and for almost a decade they built a life full of love, laughter, and complicity. Isabella was born when Raphael was 33, a girl with large, curious eyes, curly brown hair like her mother's, and a smile that lit up any room. Camilla dedicated herself to motherhood with the same passion she devoted to everything in life, transforming their apartment into a universe of colors, music, and play. Raphael, even absorbed by the company's dizzying growth, made sure to be present. Family dinners, weekends at the park, bedtime stories. These were sacred moments. 2 years after Isabella, Sophia arrived. A baby with rosy cheeks, bright eyes, and a calm temperament. The family was complete. Raphael remembered Camilla holding Sophia in her lap while Isabella, then 3 years old, softly hummed to her little sister. The scene was etched in his memory as a perfect portrait of happiness, but happiness, he would discover, could be as fragile as glass. Sophia was just 1 year old when Camilla passed away. Isabella was 3. Raphael could still hear Isabella's cries calling for her mother, not understanding why she wasn't coming back. He could feel the weight of Sophia in his arms, crying incessantly, as if she knew, even so small, that something fundamental had changed forever. They were terrible months. Raphael had to learn to be both father and mother, balancing board meetings with baby bottles, multi-million-pound negotiations with diaper changes, international conferences with sleepless nights, calming 2 frightened and confused children. He hired nannies, caregivers, specialized professionals. Some stayed weeks, others months. Isabella rejected them all. The girl, who had once been joyful and outgoing, became quiet, distrustful. She cried in secret, hugged her mother's pillow, and refused to sleep alone. Sophia, still a baby, seemed to feel the tension in the air and cried much more than would be normal. Raphael felt like a failure. No matter how hard he tried, no matter how much effort he put in, it was never enough. Guilt consumed him day after day. Guilt for not being able to replace Camilla. Guilt for needing to work. Guilt for seeing his daughters suffer and not knowing how to alleviate their pain. The first 2 years were a daily struggle for emotional survival. Raphael drastically reduced his travels, delegated more responsibilities to his vice presidents, but still felt he was failing. Isabella began child therapy. Sophia needed constant pediatric monitoring due to colic and reflux that worsened with stress. The house, once full of life, had become silent, heavy, permeated by a sadness that Raphael didn't know how to dispel. It was at a corporate event, 2 years after Camilla's passing, that Raphael met Patricia Maxwell. She was a guest speaker, a business management consultant with an impressive resume and a magnetic presence. Tall, elegant, With perfectly straightened black hair and impeccable clothes, Patricia caught everyone's attention in the room. Her lecture on leadership in times of crisis was inspiring. Raphael met her at the cocktail reception after the event. The conversation flowed naturally. Patricia showed genuine interest in tech vision, asked intelligent questions, and laughed at his jokes. For the first time in years, Raphael felt seen as a man, not just as a widower or an overwhelmed father. They started dating. Discreet dinners at sophisticated restaurants, cultural events, strolls through the city. Patricia was everything that seemed safe at that moment: mature, successful, independent. She listened to Raphael talk about the difficulties with the girls and offered practical advice, always with a tone of understanding and support. She said she perfectly understood his situation, that she admired his dedication as a father, and that she was there to help in any way she could. When Raphael finally introduced her to the girls 6 months after their first meeting, Patricia behaved exemplarily. She brought Isabella a present, an expensive doll that the girl barely looked at, but Patricia wasn't fazed. She praised Sophia, who was in the nanny's lap, commenting on how beautiful she was. She conversed naturally without forcing intimacy, respecting the children's space. Raphael was impressed. Perhaps, he thought, Patricia could be the missing piece to mend that broken family. Isabella, now 5 years old, showed no enthusiasm for Patricia's presence, but she didn't openly reject her either. She was an extremely perceptive child who had learned to observe before reacting. Sophia, at 3, was more open, but still very attached to her caregivers and her father. Raphael interpreted the absence of rejection as acceptance. He wanted so much to believe it could work. The marriage proposal came 8 months later. Raphael planned something special but discreet, a candlelight dinner on the apartment terrace with the breathtaking view of illuminated London in the background. Patricia accepted with tears in her eyes, hugged Raphael tightly, and whispered that she would do everything to make that family happy again. He believed her. He needed to believe her. The wedding took place 3 months later, an elegant but relatively small ceremony at one of London's most traditional clubs. Isabella and Sophia participated as flower girls, dressed in delicate outfits chosen by Patricia herself. The girls seemed lost in the immensity of the event, but Raphael was convinced that this was what was best for them. Patricia would be the maternal figure they lacked. She would bring stability, routine, affection. He could finally breathe a sigh of relief, knowing that his daughters would have someone exclusively dedicated to caring for them while he worked. In the first few months after the wedding, everything seemed perfect. Patricia took charge of organizing the house with military efficiency. She restructured the girls' schedules, hired new staff, and reorganized the rooms. Isabella started ballet and swimming lessons. Sophia began nursery school. The routine became structured, predictable. Raphael saw this as a sign of normalcy returning. He could concentrate better on work, travel when necessary, and attend important meetings without the constant anguish of leaving his daughters helpless. Patricia presented herself as a dedicated wife and attentive stepmother, always well-dressed, always organized, always efficient. She prepared elaborate dinners when Raphael returned late, kept the house immaculate, and attended social events by his side with elegance and charm. On the surface, she was exactly what Raphael wanted, a partner capable of sharing the burden of responsibilities. But small things began to appear at the edges of this perfection. Isabella, who was already quiet, became even more withdrawn. She started avoiding eye contact with Patricia. During family meals, the girl ate in silence, staring fixedly at her plate. Sophia, naturally cheerful, began to cry more frequently, especially when she was alone with her stepmother. Raphael attributed this to the adaptation process. After all, a new family configuration required time for everyone to adjust. He didn't notice, or didn't want to notice, the uncomfortable glances Isabella cast when Patricia spoke to her in a dry tone. He didn't notice that Sophia desperately reached out her little arms to anyone who wasn't her stepmother. He didn't see that the household staff began to seem tense, avoiding contradicting her. Raphael was so immersed in the illusion that everything was finally falling into place that he ignored the signs that were right before his eyes. Patricia began to make subtle comments about the girl's behavior. Isabella was stubborn, she would say. Sophia was too whiny. They needed stricter limits, discipline, less spoiling. Raphael, exhausted and blindly trusting his wife, agreed. He wanted to believe that Patricia knew what she was doing, that her experience and maturity brought the necessary wisdom to properly raise the girls. Months passed. Isabella turned 6. The girl who once loved to talk, tell invented stories, and ask endless questions about everything, became apathetic. Her drawings, once colorful and full of life, became dark, with heavy lines and sad figures. Her schoolteacher mentioned concern about the child's increasingly isolated behavior. Raphael scheduled extra sessions with the child psychologist, but did not associate Isabella's change with Patricia's presence at home. He thought it was still grief manifesting, the natural process of a child dealing with her mother's absence. Sophia also changed. The laughing, curious baby transformed into an insecure child who cried at the slightest sign of frustration and desperately clung to her father whenever he was around. Raphael attributed it to a phase, the terrible twos, a developing personality. He never imagined that his daughters were living a silent hell right under his nose. The routine continued. Raphael woke early, quickly had breakfast while checking emails on his tablet, said, hurried goodbyes to the girls with kisses, and left for the office. Patricia took command of the house. The girls went to school, returned, did their scheduled activities. They had dinner, bathed, and went to sleep. Everything ran like clockwork, too perfect to be true. But Raphael didn't see it. He was convinced that he had finally found balance. His company continued to grow, profits broke records, new projects were launched. At home, Patricia managed everything with a firm hand. The girls were enrolled in the best schools, had extracurricular activities, designer clothes, imported toys. What more could he offer? What more could a child need besides structure, comfort, and material security? Isabella tried sometimes to approach her father. She would timidly come close to him when Raphael was in his home office, standing at the door as if she wanted to say something important but didn't know how to start. Raphael, absorbed in spreadsheets and reports, would just smile at her and say he was busy, that they would talk later. Later never came. The girl would give up, go back to her room, hug her old doll, the one her mother had given her, and cry softly. Sophia, still too young to articulate what she felt, expressed her discomfort the only way she knew how, crying, throwing tantrums, refusing food. Patricia constantly complained about the girl's difficult behavior. Raphael, trusting his wife's judgment, thought Sophia needed more discipline, less indulgence. He didn't understand that those cries were a cry for help. The household staff also began to change. The cook, Mrs. Lucy, a 60-year-old woman who had worked for the family since before Isabella was born, became quiet, avoided conversation, did her work in silence, and left quickly. The housekeeper, Rosalind, who used to play with the girls, began to keep her distance, limiting herself to strictly professional duties. Raphael noticed the change, but attributed it to a more professional management that Patricia was implementing. After all, she always said it was important to maintain clear boundaries between employers and employees. 6 months after the wedding, Raphael began to sense tension in the air whenever he came home. A heavy silence hung over the apartment. The girls would run to hug him with a desperation that went beyond normal longing. Isabella would hold his hand tightly, as if fearing he would disappear. Sophia would cling to his lap and refuse to get down. Patricia observed everything with a controlled smile, commenting that the children were too spoiled, that they needed to learn independence. Raphael wanted to believe. He needed to believe. He had invested so much in this new beginning, placed so much hope in the possibility of rebuilding a functional family, that admitting his mistake would be devastating. So, he continued to ignore it. He continued to work long hours. He continued to trust Patricia. He continued to pretend that everything was fine, until that Thursday afternoon, when everything changed. Raphael had an important meeting with International. Investors scheduled for 2 o'clock. Tech Vision was negotiating an expansion into Latin America, and that meeting was crucial. But half an hour before the scheduled time, he received a message informing him that the investors had missed their flight and would need to reschedule for the following week. Annoyed, but with nothing else urgent at the office, Raphael decided to go home early. It was only 3 in the afternoon on an ordinary Thursday. When he entered the apartment, he used his key silently, as he always did, so as not to startle the girls if they were sleeping. The house was strangely quiet. He left his briefcase on the hall table, loosened his tie and walked towards the bedrooms. That's when he heard it. Screams. They were coming from the kitchen. Patricia's voice, altered, furious, unrecognizable. Raphael stopped, confused. He walked slowly to the kitchen door, which was ajar. What he saw on the other side would change everything forever. Isabella was huddled on the floor, holding Sophia in her lap. The baby was crying desperately, her face red, her tiny hands clutching her older sister's blouse. Around them, food was scattered on the floor, broken dishes, spilled water. A pot on the stove was boiling, releasing steam, completely unsupervised. And Patricia, standing, pointing an accusing finger at the 2 children, screamed incessantly. Her voice was laden with venom, pure hatred distilled in every word. She called Isabella useless, incompetent, stupid. She accused the girl of having ruined dinner on purpose, of being a terrible child, of being good for nothing. Isabella cried, apologizing repeatedly, without even knowing what she was apologizing for, trying to protect her sister with her small, fragile body. Sophia screamed in terror, sobbing, trembling in Isabella's arms. Raphael stood paralyzed at the door. His brain refused to process the scene. Was that furious, out-of-control, cruel woman his wife? The same person he believed to be his family's salvation? How had he not seen? How had he been so blind? Patricia continued screaming, oblivious to his presence. She accused the girls of being a burden, of disrupting her life, of being to blame for everything that went wrong. Isabella, only 6 years old, tried to calm Sophia while apologizing, taking blame that wasn't hers, asking forgiveness for existing. It was then that Raphael saw with absolute clarity the truth that had been hidden all along. His daughters were not adapting. They were surviving. They were being emotionally shattered day after day, while he worked oblivious, blindly trusting a woman who pretended to be who she was not. The trauma, the sadness, Isabella's silence, Sophia's constant crying, everything made sense now. And the guilt Raphael felt at that moment was greater than any guilt he had ever experienced. He took a step forward. His voice came out hoarse, trembling, laden with a rage he didn't even know he was capable of feeling. He called Patricia's name. She turned, startled, and for a fraction of a second, Raphael saw fear in her eyes, fear of being discovered. Then quickly she recomposed her expression, tried to smile, tried to explain, tried to minimize. She said the girls had made a mess, that she was just teaching responsibility, that he didn't understand how difficult it was to deal with spoiled children all day long. But Raphael wasn't listening. His eyes were fixed on Isabella. The girl stared at him with an expression that broke his heart into 1,000 pieces, relief mixed with terror. Relief because someone had finally seen, terror of what would happen next. She still held Sophia, who was crying compulsively, and tears streamed down the older girl's face, wetting her little sister's hair. Raphael walked to his daughters, completely ignoring Patricia. He knelt on the floor, amidst the scattered food and broken dishes, and extended his arms. Isabella hesitated for a second as if she couldn't believe she was truly safe, and then threw herself into her father's arms, still holding Sophia. Raphael hugged them both tightly, feeling Isabella's small body tremble against his, hearing Sophia's sobs, and realized with a searing pain in his chest that he had failed them in an irreparable way. Patricia still tried to speak, explain, manipulate the situation, but Raphael didn't want to listen. He stood up, with Sophia in one arm and Isabella clutching his hand, and said only one sentence, in an icy tone that admitted no discussion. "They're coming with me now." Patricia tried to protest, but something in Raphael's expression silenced her. He walked to the girls' bedroom, quickly grabbed some clothes, picked up their favorite toys, and left the apartment without looking back. In the elevator, as he descended the 40 floors to the ground, Raphael hugged his daughters and made a silent, Promise never again. Never again would he put anything or anyone above their emotional safety. Never again would he be blind to the signs. Never again would he fail them in this way. Isabella still cried softly, hiding her face in her father's shoulder. Sophia had finally calmed down a bit, but still sobbed from time to time, clinging to Raphael's neck as if her life depended on it. And perhaps it did. Perhaps they had depended on him from the beginning, and he had miserably failed to protect them from the person who was supposed to care for them. Raphael called his driver and asked to be taken to the nearest hotel. He would not return to that apartment, not while Patricia was there, not while that place represented pain and trauma for his girls. He needed time to think, to understand the extent of the damage, to figure out how to fix what was broken. In the back seat of the car, with his 2 daughters nestled against him, Raphael finally allowed himself to feel the full weight of what had happened. And as London passed by the window in a blur of lights and movement, he knew that nothing would ever be the same. The life he had tried to build, the family he had tried to reconstruct over the ashes of loss, everything had crumbled. But this time, he would not repeat the same mistakes. This time, he would put his daughters first, above everything and everyone. Because he had learned in the most painful way possible that no illusion of perfection, no desperate attempt to fill voids, no personal need for companionship was worth more than the safety and happiness of the 2 people who depended on him most in the world. His daughters, his heart, his reason for being. And from that moment on, Raphael would do whatever was necessary to give them back the childhood they deserved, the peace that had been stolen from them, and the love that should never have been conditional or shared with those who didn't deserve it. The hotel Raphael chose was in Notting Hill, a leafy and tranquil neighborhood in London, far enough from the Canary Wharf apartment for him to breathe. It was a discreet establishment, more like a residence than a hotel, with spacious and cozy suites. Raphael asked for the best suite available, one with 2 connected bedrooms, a living room and a small kitchen. He needed space. He needed a place where his daughters could feel minimally comfortable, while he organized his thoughts and planned his next steps. When they arrived at the room, it was already past 7 in the evening. Isabella and Sophia were still visibly shaken. The older girl wouldn't let go of her father's hand, and little Sophia refused to leave his lap. Raphael sat on the living room sofa with them, not knowing exactly what to say or how to begin. Words seemed insufficient, inadequate in the face of the immensity of what he had witnessed that afternoon. It was Isabella who broke the silence. In a small voice, almost a whisper, she asked if they were going home. Raphael felt his heart clench. The way the girl said home, laden with fear and apprehension, said it all. That luxury apartment, with its stunning view and impeccable finishes, had never truly been a home for the girls. It had been a gilded cage, a setting of silent terror. Raphael hugged Isabella tightly and promised that they wouldn't return until he was absolutely sure they would be safe. He explained in simple, honest words that what had happened that afternoon was unacceptable, that no one had the right to treat them that way, and that he, as their father, had the responsibility to protect them. Isabella said nothing, just nestled closer to her father's chest, and Raphael realized that the girl didn't fully believe him. And how could she? He had failed to protect her for months. Trust would need to be rebuilt, and that would take time. That first night at the hotel, Raphael ordered food for delivery. Pizza, Isabella's favorite dish. But the girl barely touched her. Food? Sophia also ate little, more interested in clinging to her father than in anything else. After dinner, Raphael bathed them both, dressed them in the pajamas he had hastily brought, and tried to put them to sleep. But neither of them wanted to stay in their room. Isabella started crying when Raphael tried to leave, and Sophia screamed desperately. So he improvised. He brought pillows and blankets to the living room, made a kind of camp on the floor, and lay there with his 2 daughters, one on each side. It took Isabella a long time to fall asleep. She lay looking at the ceiling, restless, turning from side to side. Raphael held her small hand and began to do what he used to do when she was a baby. Sing softly. They were simple songs that Camilla used to sing, and that he had forgotten over the past few years. Gradually, Isabella's breathing calmed, her eyes closed, and she finally fell asleep. Sophia, exhausted from crying so much, had already been asleep for some time, curled up against her father. Raphael stayed awake all night. He couldn't stop thinking. He mentally reviewed the past months, trying to identify all the signs he had ignored. The changes in Isabella's behavior, Sophia's excessive crying, the tension of the staff. Everything was there, right in front of him, screaming for attention, and he had simply chosen not to see. He had chosen to believe in the fantasy he had built, because facing reality would mean admitting that he had made a terrible mistake. And now, his daughters were paying the price. The next morning, Raphael woke up to Sophia touching his face. The girl was sitting beside him, looking at him with her clear, curious eyes. Isabella was still sleeping deeply, hugging a pillow. Raphael picked Sophia up, took her to the suite's kitchen, prepared a bottle and sat with her by the window, watching the city wake up. While Sophia quietly drank her bottle, Raphael made a mental list of what he needed to do. Talk to a lawyer. Talk to a psychologist specializing in child trauma. Talk to the household staff to understand exactly what had happened during all those months. And eventually, talk to the girls themselves when they were ready to speak. Isabella woke up around 9 in the morning. She seemed disoriented for a moment, looking around with confusion until her eyes met Raphael's. She immediately relaxed. Raphael prepared a simple breakfast: toast, juice, fruit. Isabella ate a little more than the night before, which Raphael considered a small step forward. Sophia was more animated, playing with her feet, making little noises. For the first time in a long time, Raphael saw a hint of a smile on Isabella's face as she watched her younger sister. That same morning, Raphael made some calls. The first was to his personal lawyer, Marcus, a competent and discreet man who had worked with the family for years. He briefly explained the situation, without going into too many details, and asked for guidance on how to proceed with the divorce. Marcus was direct. Raphael had more than enough reasons for an immediate separation. Emotional neglect, psychological abuse of minors, all documentable if there were witnesses. Raphael mentioned the staff, and Marcus assured him that he would handle everything with the utmost discretion and speed possible. The second call was to Dr. Eleanor Finch, a renowned child psychologist, who had previously treated Isabella in the first years after Camilla's loss. Raphael explained the situation in more detail, and Dr. Finch expressed immediate concern. She had noticed in recent sessions with Isabella a worrying regression in the girl's behavior, but had not been able to identify the exact cause. Now everything made sense. She asked to see both girls as soon as possible, and Raphael scheduled a session for the following day. The third call was to Mrs. Lucy, the cook. The elderly woman's voice was tense when she answered. Raphael was gentle, explained that he needed to talk to her personally, and arranged a meeting for that same afternoon at a coffee shop near the hotel. Mrs. Lucy hesitated but agreed. The meeting with Mrs. Lucy was revealing and devastating. The 60-year-old woman, who had worked for the family for almost a decade, cried as she told everything. She said she had tried to speak up, but Patricia had threatened her with dismissal if she opened her mouth. She described horrific scenes, Patricia screaming at Isabella for insignificant reasons, calling the girl stupid, useless, a nuisance. Sophia being left crying in her crib for hours while Patricia was on the phone or watching television. The children being forced to eat even when they said they weren't hungry, being punished with isolation for any small mistake. Mrs. Lucy revealed that Isabella had developed the habit of apologizing for everything, absolutely everything, even when she had done nothing wrong. She would say sorry for knocking over a glass of water, sorry for making noise, sorry for existing. Raphael listened in silence, feeling rage grow with every word. But it was a rage directed primarily at himself. How had he not noticed? How had he been so negligent, so absent, so blind? Mrs. Lucy held his hand and said something Raphael would never forget. "You are a good father, Dr. Alastair. You were just lost, but now you see. And now you can fix it." After Mrs. Lucy, Raphael also spoke with Rosalind, the housekeeper, who confirmed everything and added more disturbing details. Isabella had nail marks on her arms on some occasions, a result of Patricia holding her too tightly when reprimanding her. Sophia had developed a fear of loud noises, flinching and crying whenever she heard any sudden sound. Both employees were willing to testify formally, if necessary. Raphael thanked them, promised they would continue working for the family if they wished, and assured them that Patricia would never again have access to his daughters. The consultation with Dr. Finch the next day was equally difficult. The psychologist first spoke with Isabella, alone, in a playroom specially prepared for children. Raphael stayed outside, anxious, occasionally hearing soft laughter, and then crying. When Isabella emerged almost an hour later, she looked exhausted, but also, somehow, lighter. Dr. Finch called Raphael for a private conversation while an assistant stayed with the girls. The diagnosis was clear. Isabella was suffering from complex post-traumatic stress. Prolonged exposure to emotional abuse, combined with unresolved grief for her mother and a feeling of abandonment by her father, had created a serious condition. The girl had developed survival strategies, silencing herself to avoid provoking anger, taking on responsibilities inappropriate for her age while trying to protect her sister, blaming herself for everything to try and control the uncontrollable. Sophia, though younger, also showed signs of trauma. The bond between the two sisters was, at the same time, a source of strength and an additional source of anxiety for Isabella, who felt responsible for Sophia's safety. Dr. Finch recommended intensive therapy for Isabella and regular monitoring for Sophia, but beyond that, she emphasized the importance of stability, predictability, and, above all, presence. The girls needed to rebuild trust in adults, especially in authority figures. They needed to feel safe, that they wouldn't be hurt, that they could be children without fear, and that would require time, patience, and absolute dedication. Raphael left that consultation devastated, but also determined. He would drastically reduce his working hours. He would delegate more, trust his team more, put tech vision in the background. His daughters were his absolute priority now. Everything else could wait. The divorce process moved quickly. Marcus, the lawyer, worked with impressive efficiency, with the testimonies of Mrs. Lucy and Rosalind as well as Dr. Finch's notes and Raphael's own testimony about what he had witnessed. A solid case was built. Patricia tried to negotiate, tried to soften the terms, tried to get a share of Raphael's assets. But Marcus was relentless. She would sign the papers and leave their lives forever, with no right to anything beyond what she had brought into the marriage, or face a public trial that would destroy her professional reputation. Patricia chose the first path. 3 weeks after that fateful afternoon, the marriage was officially over. Raphael remained at the hotel throughout this period. The girls adapted surprisingly well to the environment. Isabella seemed more relaxed there than she had ever been in the apartment. Sophia was also gradually opening up, smiling more, playing more. But Raphael knew this was temporary. They needed a real home. They needed routine, stability, a place where they could feel safe long-term. But Raphael also understood that he couldn't do it alone. Not again. Not in the same way he had tried before. He needed help, but this time he needed the right help. Someone qualified, someone who genuinely understood child trauma, someone who saw his daughters as precious human beings and not as inconveniences to be tolerated. It was Dr. Finch who suggested Raphael consider hiring a resident caregiver specializing in child development and trauma. Someone with solid training, proven experience, and above all, emotional sensitivity. The psychologist mentioned that she knew some excellent professionals, but would need to make some contacts before recommending anyone specific. Raphael agreed immediately. Anything that could help his daughters recover. 2 days later, Dr. Finch called. She said she had the perfect person, young but extremely competent, graduated in psychology, with a specialization in child development and family therapy. She had worked in shelters, specialized clinics, and more recently, as a private caregiver for children in difficult transition situations, including cases of grief, traumatic divorce, and neglect. Her name was Marina Caldwell, and she was available for an interview. Raphael scheduled the meeting for the following afternoon in a private room at the hotel. While waiting, he felt nervous in a way he hadn't expected. So much was at stake. His daughter's recovery depended in large part on finding the right person. He couldn't make a mistake again. He couldn't blindly trust again. He needed to be discerning, attentive, careful. Marina Caldwell arrived, punctually at 3 in the afternoon. She was a 28-year-old woman of average height, with wavy brown hair tied in a simple ponytail and kind eyes. She wore no excessive makeup or flashy clothes. She wore jeans, a white blouse and trainers, a practical and discreet choice. But what struck Raphael most was her expression. There was something genuinely warm in her gaze, a kind of serenity and presence that immediately conveyed trust. They sat in the suite's living room. Raphael had asked Mrs. Lucy to take the girls to the hotel park so they could talk privately. Marina began by introducing herself with simplicity and honesty. She spoke about her academic background, her years working with children in different contexts, her passion for helping families in times of crisis. But she didn't try to sell herself. She didn't make grandiose promises. She didn't try to impress with professional jargon or pompous credentials. Instead, she asked questions about Isabella and Sophia, about their personalities, their fears, their joys, about what they had lived through, what they were living through now, what Raphael hoped for their future. She listened with genuine attention, made mental notes, demonstrated empathy without being condescending. Raphael realized that Marina wasn't just there to get a job. She was genuinely interested in understanding if she could truly help that family. When Raphael spoke, with difficulty, about what he had witnessed that afternoon, about the months of emotional abuse his daughters had suffered, Marina showed no performative shock or exaggerated pity. She simply nodded with a serious and understanding expression and said something Raphael would never forget. Children are incredibly resilient, but they need 2 fundamental elements to recover from trauma: safety and presence. Safety to know they won't be hurt again. Presence of adults who see them, hear them, validate them. With these 2 elements and time, they can heal. Raphael asked if she would like to meet the girls. Marina agreed, but suggested it be something natural, without pressure. Perhaps a walk in the park, something light where she could simply be present, without demanding anything from the children. Raphael appreciated the sensitivity of her approach and agreed. In the late afternoon, they all went to the hotel park. Isabella was visibly tense when Raphael introduced Marina, but the young woman didn't force anything. She simply sat on a nearby bench, watched the girls play from a distance, and when Sophia stumbled and fell, it was Marina who calmly stood up, walked to the girl and offered her hand to help her up. Sophia hesitated, looked at her father, and then accepted the outstretched hand. Marina didn't try to hug her or make a fuss. She just helped Sophia to her feet, gently wiped the dust from the girl's knee, and returned to the bench. Isabella watched everything attentively. Raphael realized that his older daughter was testing, evaluating, trying to understand who this new person was. Marina seemed to perfectly understand what was happening. She didn't try to win Isabella's trust with bribes or false cheerfulness. She simply remained there, present but not intrusive, available but not demanding. After about an hour in the park, Raphael suggested they all have ice cream. Marina accompanied them, but kept a respectful distance. During the ice cream, Isabella finally asked Marina directly, "Are you going to live with us?" The silence that followed was deafening. Sophia stopped eating and looked at Marina with anticipation. Raphael felt his heart race. Marina was visibly nervous. The young woman took a deep breath, looked at Isabella with affection, and answered, "Honestly, only if you want me to, and only if I can help you both be happy and safe." Isabella said nothing more, just went back to eating her ice cream, but Raphael saw something in his daughter's eyes. It wasn't acceptance yet, but it wasn't rejection either. It was a half-open door, a possibility. That night, after the girls were asleep, Raphael talked with Marina for another 2 hours. They discussed routines, boundaries, expectations, therapeutic approaches, everything. Marina was clear about her conditions. She would not just be a nanny. She would be a resident caregiver, but with autonomy, to implement strategies she deemed necessary for the girls' well-being. She would work closely with Dr. Finch, participate in important decisions about the children, and expected Raphael to be present and engaged. She would not raise the girls alone. She would be there to support, to guide, to help, but the primary responsibility would remain with the father. Raphael agreed to everything. For the first time since meeting Patricia, he felt he was making the right choice. There was something about Marina that inspired genuine trust. It wasn't rehearsed perfection. It was authentic competence, true empathy, and a real commitment to the children's well-being. Marina started working the following week. Initially, she came to the hotel every day, spent a few hours with the girls, and left at night. She wanted them to get used to her presence gradually, without overload. Isabella remained cautious but slowly began to interact more. Sophia, naturally more open, already accepted Marina with relative ease, although she still preferred her father's lap. It was during an afternoon, about 2 weeks after Marina had started, that the first truly significant moment happened. Isabella was drawing at the living room table while Marina read a book to Sophia. Suddenly, Isabella started to cry. It wasn't a cry of physical pain, but a deep cry laden with emotion. Raphael was about to get up to go to her when Marina made a gentle gesture, asking him to wait. The young woman approached Isabella slowly, sat beside the girl, and simply waited. Isabella cried for several minutes. Then, between sobs, she began to speak. She said she missed her mother. She said she was afraid Marina would leave too. She said she was afraid the new stepmother would come back. She said she didn't want to have to take care of Sophia alone anymore because it was too difficult. She said she was tired of apologizing for everything. She said so many things that had been held in for so long, and Marina listened to everything without interrupting, without judging, without trying to hastily fix it. When Isabella finally stopped speaking, exhausted, Marina hugged her gently and simply said, "You are a very brave girl, Isabella, and you don't need to take care of anyone but yourself. That's an adult's job. Your job is to be a child, to play, to learn, to grow. And I promise I'll be here every day to help you and Sophia, and your father is here too. You are not alone." Isabella hugged Marina tightly and cried a little more. Sophia, who had watched everything with wide eyes, also began to cry, more out of empathy than fully understanding what was happening. And Raphael, observing this whole scene from a distance, felt something inside him break and rebuild at the same time. His daughters were beginning to heal. Slowly, painfully, but unequivocally, they were beginning to trust again. 3 months after that transformative afternoon at the hotel, Raphael made a decision that would definitively change the course of their lives. He would not return to the Canary Wharf apartment. That place was stained by too many painful memories. Its walls carried the echoes of screams and cries that Raphael could never erase. His daughters deserved a real fresh start, a space that was theirs from the beginning, without ghosts of the past haunting every room. With the help of a real estate agent, Raphael began looking for a house. Not an apartment, but a real house, with a garden, with space for the girls to run, play, and grow freely. He visited dozens of properties in different London neighbourhoods, Kensington, Hampstead, Shoreditch, but none felt right until the agent took him to see a house in Notting Hill, not far from the hotel where they were staying. It was a charming single-story building, painted white with wooden details, surrounded by a large garden with cherry trees and a small playground already installed. It had 4 spacious bedrooms, a bright living room with huge windows, a modern but cozy kitchen, and a backyard where the children could play in complete safety. The moment Raphael entered that house, he felt something he hadn't felt in years, the feeling of being home. He took Isabella and Sophia to see the house the following week. Marina accompanied them, and it was she who carefully observed the girls' reactions as they explored each room. Isabella ran through the rooms with an enthusiasm Raphael hadn't seen in months. Sophia was delighted with the garden, pointing at the flowers and making happy little noises. When Raphael asked if they would like to live there, Isabella looked at him with bright eyes and nodded vigorously. Sophia simply shouted, "Yes!" as she spun in the garden with her arms outstretched. The purchase was completed quickly, and the move happened a month later. Raphael hired decorators, but made sure everything was designed with the girls in mind. Soft colors, comfortable furniture, plenty of play spaces. Isabella's room gained a bookshelf full of books, a desk for drawing, and walls painted in lavender tones that she chose herself. Sophia's room was decorated with clouds on the ceiling, stuffed animals, and a bed shaped like a little house. Marina would have the third bedroom, spacious and comfortable, and Raphael's bedroom was strategically positioned between the girls' rooms so they would know their father was always nearby. On moving day, Isabella held Marina's hand tightly as she watched the furniture being brought into the new house. Sophia, now 3.5, ran back and forth, exploring every corner with childlike curiosity. Raphael realized that day that for the first time since Camilla's loss, his daughters seemed truly happy. It wasn't a complete happiness yet. The trauma was still there, the wounds were still healing, but light was returning to their eyes. There was hope. Marina established a consistent and nurturing routine. They woke at 7 in the morning, breakfast together, always. Isabella went to school, Sophia to nursery school. Marina picked them both up in the late afternoon and they returned home. Snacks, playtime in the garden, bath, dinner, bedtime stories. Raphael, keeping the promise he had made to himself, completely reorganized his professional schedule. He delegated most of Tech Vision's operational responsibilities to his trusted vice presidents, participated only in the most important strategic meetings, and worked from home whenever possible. Every morning, he had breakfast with his daughters. Every night he was present for dinner and to put the girls to bed. Therapy sessions with Dr. Finch continued regularly. Isabella, little by little, was learning to express herself without fear, to recognize that her feelings were valid, to understand that nothing that had happened was her fault. Sophia, still young, showed progress in the form of more smiles, fewer cries, greater confidence. Dr. Finch commented in one of her private conversations with Raphael that Marina's presence was fundamental. The young caregiver had a natural talent for creating emotional security, something that couldn't be taught with theory alone. It was a gift. Raphael observed Marina daily and was impressed by her dedication. She never lost patience. She never got irritated. When Isabella had a difficult day and refused to talk to anyone, Marina simply stayed nearby, available but not intrusive. When Sophia threw a tantrum, Marina handled the situation with calm and firmness, setting clear boundaries but always with affection. She transformed that house into a true sanctuary of peace. But it wasn't only with the girls that Marina showed sensitivity. She also noticed when Raphael was overwhelmed, when guilt consumed him, when he needed encouragement. On several occasions, after the girls had gone to sleep, Marina and Raphael would talk in the living room. She listened to him speak about his fears, his insecurities, his pain for having failed his daughters. And always, without exception, Marina reminded him that he was present now, he was doing the right thing now, he was rebuilding what had been broken. The past could not be changed, but the future was being written every day. It was during one of these evening conversations, about 4 months after moving into the new house, that Raphael realized something that surprised and scared him at the same time. He was falling in love with Marina. It was no longer just professional admiration or gratitude for what she did for his daughters. It was something deeper, more visceral. He noticed the small details. The way she smiled when Isabella told a story, the sweetness in her voice when she calmed Sophia, the dedication with which she prepared meals, considering each one's tastes, the infinite patience with which she handled daily challenges. Raphael was terrified. He couldn't be falling in love again. Not so soon. Not with his daughter's caregiver. His last relationship had been a complete disaster. It had almost destroyed Isabella and Sophia. How could he trust his own feelings again? How could he risk exposing his daughters to another potential? Disappointment. And would Marina notice? What would she think? Would she be too professional to reciprocate? Or worse, would she reciprocate only because she felt pressured by the work relationship? Raphael tried to suppress these feelings. He kept an emotional distance, focused exclusively on the girls, avoided the evening conversations with Marina, but it was useless. The heart doesn't obey reason, and the more he tried to ignore what he felt, the more intense it became. He began to notice things that had previously gone unnoticed. The way Marina tied her hair when she was cooking, the genuine laugh she let out when Sophia did something funny, the concentration on her face when she helped Isabella with her homework. Marina, for her part, was not oblivious to what was happening. She also felt it. From the first day she met Raphael, she admired his determination to fix what had been broken, his humility in recognizing mistakes, his unconditional love for his daughters. Over time, that admiration turned into something more. She found herself thinking about him during the day, smiling when she heard his voice, feeling a pang in her chest when she saw him interact with Isabella and Sophia with such tenderness. But Marina was cautious. She was afraid of ruining the dynamic they had built with so much care. The family was finally healing, the girls were progressing, everything was moving in the right direction. A romantic relationship could complicate everything. What if it didn't work out? What if she lost not only the man she was falling in love with, but also the girls she already loved as if they were her own? It was too great a risk. The tension between them grew silently, glances that lasted an extra second, hands that touched accidentally and lingered, before pulling away. Conversations that started about the girls but drifted to more personal topics. Both felt it. Both knew it. But neither had the courage to make the first move. It was Isabella, surprisingly, who broke the impasse. The girl, now 7 years old and much more communicative thanks to therapy sessions and the safe environment at home, asked an unexpected question during dinner one night. She looked at Marina and asked, "Are you going to be our mother?" The silence that followed was deafening. Sophia stopped eating and looked at Marina with expectation. Raphael felt his heart pound. Marina was visibly nervous. The young woman took a deep breath, looked at Isabella with affection and answered honestly, "I love you both as if you were my daughters, but I can't replace your mother. No one can. She will always be your mother, and she will always have a special place in your hearts. I can be someone who takes care of you, who loves you, who is here every day. If you want, I can be part of your family." Isabella thought for a moment, and then asked with the innocent frankness of children, "And do you love my daddy too?" Marina was speechless. She looked at Raphael, who was equally surprised and hopeful. The room seemed to have stopped in time. Sophia, even without fully understanding the conversation, sensed the tension and remained quiet, observing the adults. Marina could have deflected the question, could have given a vague answer, but she chose the truth. She looked at Raphael and said, in a soft but firm voice, "Yes, I do." Raphael felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. Marina had just confessed in front of the girls, something he had tried to hide even from himself. Isabella smiled, a genuine smile Raphael hadn't seen in a long time, and simply said, "That's good. I want you to stay forever." Sophia, without understanding exactly what was happening but perceiving the happiness in the room, clapped her hands and shouted, "Forever." After the girls went to sleep that night, Raphael and Marina finally talked. They sat on the living room sofa, with a careful distance between them, and for the first time since they met, they spoke openly about what they felt. Raphael confessed his fears, his insecurities, his hesitation to trust someone again. Marina shared her own concerns, the fear of ruining the relationship she had with the girls, the apprehension of not being enough. It was a long, honest, vulnerable conversation. Gradually, the distance on the sofa diminished. Words gave way to comfortable silence. And when Raphael finally gathered the courage to hold Marina's hand, she intertwined her fingers with his and smiled. There was no urgency, no rush. They knew they had time. They knew they needed to build this carefully, always putting the girls first. In the following months, the relationship between Raphael and Marina blossomed naturally and healthily. They continued to be, first and foremost, parents to Isabella and Sophia. The routine remained stable, therapy continued, the children kept progressing. But now there was something more. There was love. Not the desperate and hurried love Raphael had felt for Patricia, but a love built on solid foundations of respect, trust, mutual admiration, and shared purpose. Marina didn't move into Raphael's bedroom immediately. They kept their spaces separate for almost a year, respecting the girls' time, allowing them to gradually adjust to the new dynamic. Isabella, who initially might have felt jealous or insecure, actually seemed happy. She commented to her therapist that the family was finally complete again, that there was finally peace at home. Sophia naturally accepted everything with the innocent simplicity of young children. For her, Marina had always been there, always been part of the family. Dr. Finch closely monitored this transition and fully approved. In her regular assessments, she noted that the girls continued to progress. Isabella had fewer nightmares, expressed her emotions more easily, and had returned to smiling and playing with the lightness characteristic of childhood. Sophia was confident, secure, developing perfectly. The presence of a loving and balanced couple was, in fact, contributing positively to their emotional recovery. A year and a half after Marina started working for the family, Raphael proposed marriage. It was something simple, intimate, just the four of them. During a dinner at home, after the girls already knew exactly what was going to happen, because Raphael had talked with them beforehand, asking for their permission and blessing, he knelt before Marina and asked her to officially become part of the family. Not just as a caregiver, not just as a companion, but as a wife, as the girl's mother, as a life partner. Marina cried, Isabella cried, Sophia clapped endlessly, and Raphael also had to wipe away some tears. She said yes, of course, and the girls jumped on both of them in a collective hug that ended in laughter and more tears. It was the kind of happiness Raphael thought he would never experience again. Pure, true, deserved. The wedding happened 6 months later, a small but deeply meaningful ceremony. They held the celebration in the garden of their own house, decorated with white flowers and soft lights. Isabella and Sophia were bridesmaids. Dressed in delicate outfits they helped choose themselves. Only the closest people were present. Dr. Finch, Mrs. Lucy, Rosalind, some intimate friends of Raphael and Marina, beloved family members. There was no pomp, no ostentation. There was only love, gratitude, and hope. During the ceremony, Marina included a special moment. After exchanging vows with Raphael, she knelt in front of Isabella and Sophia and made promises to them too. She promised to love them unconditionally, protect them always, be present in all important moments of their lives, be the best mother she could be, without ever trying to erase the memory of their biological mother, whom they had and who would always deserve to be honored. The girls hugged Marina tightly, and there wasn't a dry eye among those present. After the wedding, life continued in a sweet routine of normalcy. Raphael had further reduced his working hours at TechVision. The company continued to prosper, but he had learned that professional success without personal happiness was empty. He completely delegated daily operations to his executives, participated only in crucial strategic decisions, and dedicated most of his time to his family. Marina, now officially a wife and mother, continued to be the same dedicated and loving person she had always been. She didn't change the way she treated the girls, didn't relax the established routines, didn't allow romantic love to interfere with parental responsibility. If anything, she became even more committed to the family's well-being. Isabella, now 8 years old, was flourishing. Her school grades were excellent, she had friends, participated in extracurricular activities, and most importantly, she was a happy child. She still had therapy, but now more for maintenance than intensive treatment. Dr. Finch often commented on the incredible transformation she had witnessed. From a traumatized, withdrawn, frightened girl, Isabella had become confident, expressive, full of life. Sophia, at 5, was pure energy and joy. She held no conscious memories of the traumatic period with Patricia. She was too young at the time, but she carried the emotional marks that had been carefully worked through over the years. Now she was a secure, happy girl who fully trusted the adults around her and knew she was loved unconditionally. The house in Notting Hill had transformed into exactly what Raphael had imagined, a real home. The garden was always full of laughter. The backyard witnessed endless games. The kitchen smelled of homemade food prepared with love. The living room saw family movies on weekends. The bedrooms held peaceful dreams. There was no tension, no fear, no frightening shadows in the corners. There was only light, love, security. It was during a quiet Saturday night, almost 2 years after the wedding, that Marina revealed news to Raphael that would transform everything again. They were sitting on the sofa after the girls had gone to sleep, and Marina held Raphael's hand with a look that was both nervous and happy. She was pregnant. Raphael was in shock for a few seconds, processing the information. Then a wave of pure emotion hit him. He was going to be a father again. But this time it would be different. This time he would be present from the beginning. This time there would be no fear, guilt, or absence. This time everything would be as it should have always been. He hugged Marina tightly, cried with happiness, whispered words of love and gratitude. They talked for hours about how to tell Isabella and Sophia, how to prepare them for the arrival of a brother or sister, how to ensure they didn't feel less loved or important. They planned every detail with the same care they always dedicated to everything involving the family. When they told the girls, the reaction was better than anyone could have imagined. Isabella was moved, immediately asked if she could help take care of the baby, and started making plans about how she would be the best big sister in the world. Sophia, with her typical spontaneity, jumped for joy and announced that she wanted a sister so they could play with dolls together. The pregnancy proceeded smoothly. Raphael accompanied every appointment, every ultrasound, every moment. Isabella and Sophia participated in everything, asking questions, touching Marina's growing belly, talking to the baby. Dr. Finch monitored closely, ensuring the girls were coping well with the change, but there was no cause for concern. They were genuinely happy and excited. The baby was born on a sunny spring morning when the cherry trees in the garden were laden with fruit and the air smelled of freshly bloomed flowers. Raphael was by Marina's side throughout the labor, holding her hand, wiping her sweat, whispering words of encouragement. When they finally heard the newborn's first cry, both cried too. It was a boy, a healthy boy with alert eyes and a strong cry who arrived to complete that family that had been rebuilt brick by brick on the ruins of pain and trauma. Isabella and Sophia were in the waiting room with Mrs. Lucy, anxious, nervous, emotional. When Raphael came out to give the news, the two girls jumped on him, asking 1,000 questions at once. Could they see the baby? Was he handsome? Did he have a lot of hair? Was Mommy okay? Raphael answered all of them with patience and love, and then took them to meet their little brother. The scene in the hospital room would be etched forever in Raphael's memory. Marina, exhausted but radiant, held the baby in her arms. Isabella and Sophia approached with reverence, almost afraid to breathe too loudly. When Marina lowered the blanket so they could see their brother's tiny face, Isabella let out a gasp of enchantment, and Sophia simply murmured, "He's so tiny." Raphael watched his 3 children and his wife all together in that hospital room and felt a gratitude so profound he could barely breathe. They named the boy Gabriel, a name that means messenger of God, bearer of good news. And indeed, Gabriel brought with him the definitive certainty that this family had managed to overcome the impossible. It had passed through the darkest valley and emerged on the other side, stronger, more united, more true. The first few months with Gabriel at home were intense, as they always are with newborns, but there was a fundamental difference. Raphael was present, completely present. He woke up in the middle of the night to help with feedings, change diapers, calmed the baby when he cried. He didn't delegate, didn't hide behind work, didn't use the company as an excuse for absence. TechVision continued to exist, continued to be successful, but it was no longer the center of his life. His family was. Isabella and Sophia fell madly in love with their little brother. Isabella, now 9 years old, took her role as older sister very seriously. She helped rock Gabriel, sang to him, kept an eye on him when Marina needed to do other tasks. Sophia, at 6, was more playful, made faces at the baby, showed him her toys, talked to him in a mix of English and baby babble that only she understood. Marina observed everything with overflowing love. To see the girls she had helped heal now showing so much affection for their brother, to see Raphael being the present and dedicated father he should always have been, to see the family they had built together flourishing in all its imperfect and absolutely real beauty, was more than she had ever dared to dream. Mrs. Lucy, who continued to work for the family, often commented on the transformation she had witnessed. She remembered those two frightened and traumatized girls from years ago and looked at the confident and happy children they were now, and could barely believe it. She had seen the darkness, she had seen the abuse, she had seen the fear, and now she saw the light. She saw the love. She saw the healing. Raphael, for his part, often found himself in moments of deep reflection. He looked back to those terrible years after Camilla's loss, to the catastrophic mistake that was Patricia, to the pain he had unintentionally caused his daughters, and still felt the sharp pang of guilt. But now that guilt was accompanied by something more: redemption. He had made mistakes, yes. He had failed terribly. But he had recognized the mistake, he had fought to fix it, he had put pride aside, he had prioritized what truly mattered. He had rebuilt not only a family, but himself. In one of the follow-up sessions with Dr. Finch, almost 3 years after that fateful day when everything changed, the psychologist made a final evaluation of Isabella. The girl no longer needed regular therapy. She had overcome the trauma. She would still carry some marks, like every person who goes through difficult experiences, but they were healed marks, not open wounds. Isabella was resilient, balanced, happy. She was everything a 9-year-old child should be. Dr. Finch talked with Raphael after the session and said something that made him cry. She said he should forgive himself. That love is not perfect, parenthood is not perfect, life is not perfect. People make mistakes. Parents make mistakes. What defines a good father is not never making mistakes, but having the courage to recognize the mistake, the humility to seek help, and the determination to do better. And Raphael had done exactly that. Raphael returned home that day with a heart lighter than it had been in years. He found Marina in the kitchen preparing dinner while Gabriel slept in his pram beside her. Isabella was doing homework at the living room table, concentrated but relaxed. Sophia was playing in the garden with her dolls, creating elaborate stories aloud. It was an absolutely common, everyday, simple scene. And it was perfect. That night after dinner, after the children had gone to sleep, Raphael and Marina sat in the garden under the stars. Gabriel slept peacefully in the portable crib beside them, and the air was fragrant with the scent of night-blooming flowers. They talked about everything and nothing, about plans for the future, about the small joys of daily life, about how grateful they were for everything they had. Raphael held Marina's hand and said something he had been thinking about for weeks. He said he wanted to make even more drastic changes at TechVision. He was considering selling his majority stake in the company, maintaining only a consultative position, and dedicating himself fully to his family. Money was no longer a concern. They had more than enough resources to live comfortably for the rest of their lives, and he no longer wanted to divide his attention. He wanted to be present for every one of Sophia's football games, for every one of Isabella's school presentations, for every one of Gabriel's developmental milestones. He wanted to build memories, not fortunes. Marina listened and smiled. She said she would support any decision he made, but reminded him that he didn't need to choose between extremes. He could find a balance. He could remain involved with the company he built, but at a pace that allowed him to be present. It didn't have to be all or nothing. Raphael thought about it and realized she was right, as always. In the following months, Raphael implemented significant changes in TechVision's structure. He promoted 2 vice presidents to co-CEOs, completely delegated daily operations, and limited his own participation to quarterly strategic meetings and crucial decisions. It worked perfectly. The company continued to prosper, perhaps even better than before, because it now had more distributed leadership and less dependence on a single person. With more free time, Raphael discovered joys he had forgotten. He started cooking with Marina and the girls on weekends, turning the kitchen into a fun chaos of flying flour, broken eggs, laughter, and dishes that weren't always perfect, but were always made with love. He started reading more, not just corporate reports, but real books, fiction, poetry, works that fed the soul. He started to really play with the children, casting aside adult dignity to throw himself on the floor and build block castles with Sophia, or play football in the garden with Isabella, or simply lie down watching Gabriel discover his own hands. Isabella flourished even more. At 10 years old, she was a brilliant, creative girl full of dreams. She wanted to be an architect, like the biological mother she had never known, but about whom Raphael and Marina spoke frequently and fondly, keeping Camilla's memory alive without pain, only with love and gratitude. Isabella had friends, hobbies, passions. She was, in every sense, a healthy and happy child. Sophia at 7 was pure creative energy. She loved arts, spent hours drawing, painting, creating. Her room was an improvised studio, with walls covered with her works. She was outgoing, made friends easily, saw magic in everything. And she was still extremely protective of Gabriel, even though her little brother now walked and was starting to talk, not needing as much protection. Gabriel, approaching 2 years old, was a curious and cheerful boy. He loved following his sisters everywhere, trying to imitate everything they did. He had Marina's easy smile and Raphael's stubborn determination. He was loved unconditionally by his sisters, who adorably vied for his attention. The house in Notting Hill had become exactly the home Raphael had imagined. The walls held happy memories. The garden witnessed sunny afternoons and games. The kitchen saw family dinners full of conversations and laughter. The bedrooms harbored peaceful dreams. There were no more shadows, no more fear, no more pain. One Saturday afternoon, almost 4 years after that traumatic revelation that changed everything, Raphael was in the garden, pushing Gabriel on the swing while watching Isabella and Sophia play tag. Marina came out of the house with a tray of lemonade and homemade cookies and joined them. They sat on the bench under the cherry tree, with Gabriel on Marina's lap, and simply watched the girls play. It was in that moment, in that absolutely ordinary and absolutely extraordinary scene, that Raphael had an epiphany. Success was not what he thought it was. It wasn't the billions he had accumulated. It wasn't the awards he had received. It wasn't the empire he had built. Success was this. It was seeing his daughters laughing without fear. It was sitting beside the woman he loved under, a tree they themselves planted. It was knowing that when his children went to sleep that night, they would sleep safe, loved, happy. It was having transformed ruin into reconstruction, pain into healing, trauma into strength. Raphael looked at Marina and saw in her eyes the reflection of the same thought. They had done it. Not perfectly, not without scars, but they had done it. They had taken a shattered family and put it back together with love, patience, humility, and tireless dedication. And now, looking at the 3 children who were the center of his universe, Raphael knew that every mistake, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt, every tear shed, everything had been worth it. Isabella ran to them, sweaty and breathless, asking for water. Raphael handed her a glass of lemonade, and she drank it quickly, then threw herself into her father's lap, even though she was too big for it. Raphael hugged her tightly, kissed the top of her head, and whispered that he loved her. Isabella returned the hug and said something that made Raphael's heart overflow. "I love you too, Daddy, and thank you." "Thank you? For what?" Raphael asked. Isabella looked at him, with those eyes too wise for her age, and replied, "Thank you for not giving up on us, for saving us, for giving us a real family." Raphael couldn't speak. Emotion blocked his voice. He just squeezed the hug tighter, feeling tears stream down his face. Sophia, always competitive with her sister, ran to them and threw herself on top of Isabella, turning the hug into a human pile of laughter and intertwined limbs. Gabriel, not wanting to be left out, also joined the game, shouting excitedly. Marina joined the collective embrace, and there, in that garden under the afternoon, son, the Alistair Caldwell family hugged with all the strength of the love that united them. At night, after putting the 3 children to sleep, each in their own rooms now, Raphael stayed a few minutes at Isabella's bedroom door, just watching her sleep. He remembered the frightened girl she had been, the child who took blame that wasn't hers, who carried the weight of impossible responsibilities. And he looked at the child she was now, confident, balanced, happy. The transformation was a miracle built day after day with love and dedication. He went to Sophia's room, who slept, hugging a dozen stuffed animals, and smiled. That girl who had cried so much, who had shown so much fear, now slept peacefully, surrounded by the objects she loved. He went to Gabriel's room, who slept with his arms open, completely relaxed, completely safe. That boy would never know what it was like to grow up in fear. He would never know what it was like not to trust his parents. He would grow up in a home full of love, and that was the greatest gift Raphael could give him. He returned to the room he shared with Marina, and found her already in bed reading a book. She looked at him and smiled, that smile that still made Raphael's heart race. He lay down beside her, and they remained in comfortable silence for a few minutes, just appreciating each other's presence. Raphael broke the silence and said something he had been thinking about for some time. He said he wanted to renew their wedding vows, not because anything was wrong, but because he wanted to celebrate everything they had built together. He wanted, with their 3 children present, to reaffirm his commitment not only to each other, but to the family they formed. Marina loved the idea immediately. They started planning right there, excited like teenagers, imagining every detail of the ceremony. The vow renewal happened 6 months later, on an autumn afternoon when the garden trees were golden and the air had that characteristic freshness of the season. It was even more intimate than the original wedding, just the immediate family and a few very close friends. Isabella read a poem she had written especially for the occasion, about family, love, and new beginnings. Sophia sang a song she had learned at school with a clear and confident voice. Gabriel, now almost 3 years old, simply ran among the guests distributing flower petals and laughter. During the vows, Raphael not only promised to love Marina forever, but also made public promises to his 3 daughters. He promised to be the present father he should have been from the beginning. He promised to protect them always. He promised to create a home where they would always feel safe, loved, valued. He promised that he would never put anything above their well-being. And he promised that he would always listen to them. Marina made similar promises. She promised to love the 3 children as if they had all come from her own womb. She promised to honor Camilla's memory, ensuring that Isabella and Sophia always knew of the extraordinary mother they had. She promised to be the best mother she could be, not perfect but present, dedicated, loving. There wasn't a dry eye among those present. Dr. Finch, who was there witnessing the culmination of years of hard work, cried openly. Mrs. Lucy, who had seen the entire journey from the beginning, had to sit down to control her emotion. Even some of Raphael's friends who didn't know the whole story felt the emotional weight of the moment. After the ceremony, there was a relaxed lunch in the garden. The children played, the adults talked, the sun filtered through the golden leaves of the trees, creating patterns of light and shadow on the ground. It was perfect in its imperfection, beautiful in its simplicity, deeply meaningful in its normalcy. Raphael observed everything from a corner of the garden, with Gabriel sleeping in his arms and a permanent smile on his face. Marina approached and rested her head on his shoulder. They stayed like that for a few minutes, just watching Isabella and Sophia play with their friends' children, listening to the laughter, feeling the gentle afternoon breeze. Marina whispered a question. "Are you happy?" Raphael looked at her, looked at the garden full of life, looked at Gabriel sleeping peacefully in his arms, looked at his 2 older daughters radiant with joy, and answered with absolute certainty, "More than I ever imagined possible." And it was true. Years ago, when everything had crumbled, when he had discovered the extent of the harm he had allowed to happen under his roof, Raphael thought he would never be able to forgive himself, never be able to rebuild. He thought he had irreparably destroyed his daughter's future, but he was wrong. With help, with dedication, with unconditional love, with the right partner by his side, he had managed not only to fix what was broken, but to build something even stronger, truer, more beautiful. The journey had not been easy. There had been nights of crying, days of doubt, moments of despair. There had been setbacks, regressions, unexpected challenges. Healing is not linear. Trauma leaves scars. The path to redemption is arduous. But every step taken had been worth it. Every tear shed had brought eventual relief. Every difficult moment had strengthened the family. Raphael had learned fundamental lessons over those years. He learned that presence is worth more than presents, that time is worth more than money, that listening is worth more than solving, that admitting mistakes is worth more than maintaining pride, that true love is not perfect, but it is persistent, that family is not defined only by blood, but by a daily choice to be present, to care, to love. He also learned about warning signs, about the importance of trusting instincts, about never ignoring behavioral changes in children. He learned that material comfort does not replace emotional security, that structure without affection is a prison, that discipline without love is abuse. He learned to differentiate between someone who genuinely loves his daughters and someone who merely tolerates their existence. And most importantly, he learned that it is never too late to start over. It is never too late to make the right choice. It is never too late to prioritize what truly matters. He had made terrible mistakes, but he had recognized them and fought to fix them. And in the end, what seemed to be the end, the darkest moment, turned out to be the beginning of something infinitely better. The following years passed in sweet normalcy, as they always do, bringing inevitable changes. Isabella eventually left for university, but remained close, visiting frequently, always feeling that she had a home to return to. Sophia pursued her artistic passion and talent, dreaming of becoming a children's book illustrator. Gabriel grew quickly, curious about everything, adored by his older sisters, who vied for who would be the most important influence in his life. Raphael kept his promise to be present. He never missed a school presentation, an important game, a necessary conversation. He was there when Isabella had her first heartbreak. He was there when Sophia won her first drawing award. He was there for every one of Gabriel's developmental milestones, and Marina was always by his side, a balanced and loving partnership. The house in Notting Hill witnessed countless family dinners, noisy birthday parties, lazy Sunday mornings, movie nights with popcorn, teenage discussions, emotional reconciliations, belly-aching laughter, some inevitable tears, and a constant, unwavering love that permeated every room. Mrs. Lucy eventually retired, but continued to visit the family regularly, unable to completely detach from the children she had helped raise. Rosalind also remained close, becoming practically part of the extended family. Dr. Finch followed the children's development even after formal therapy ended, always interested in seeing the progress of that family that represented one of the most impressive recovery stories of her career. Patricia never reappeared. She had completely vanished from their lives, exactly as it should be. Raphael occasionally thought of her, not with anger, but with a kind of distant pity. She had lost the opportunity to be part of something beautiful. She had chosen cruelty when she could have chosen love. Her choices defined her, and the consequences were hers to bear. Camilla, Raphael's first wife, Isabella, and Sophia's biological mother, was never forgotten. Her photo remained in the living room, and the family often shared stories about her. Marina never felt jealous or uncomfortable about this. She understood that Camilla had been fundamental in the formation of that family, that her love had left indelible marks on Raphael and the girls. There was room to honor the past while building the future. On a particularly special night, when Isabella turned 16, Raphael did something he had been planning for a long time. During her birthday dinner, he handed her a letter that Camilla had written shortly before she passed away. It was a letter to be read when Isabella was older, full of maternal advice, expressions of love, hopes for the future. Raphael had kept that letter for years, waiting for the right moment. Isabella read it aloud, with tears streaming down her face but a firm voice. Camilla spoke about dreams, about courage, about never giving up on herself. She spoke about the love she felt for her two daughters, and she ended by saying that no matter what happened, she would always be present, not physically, but in every choice Isabella made, in every victory, in every challenge overcome. She told her to take care of her younger sister, to be strong but also vulnerable, to love intensely but with wisdom. When Isabella finished reading, everyone at the table was crying. Sophia hugged her sister tightly. Gabriel, now 10 years old and already understanding the depth of the moment, held Isabella's hand on the other side. Marina and Raphael exchanged glances with that deep understanding that only years of true partnership bring. That family, built on losses, and rebirths on mistakes and redemptions, on pain and healing, was living proof that love can overcome anything. Raphael stood up, asked for everyone's attention, and made a toast. Not just to Isabella and her birthday, but to the entire family. He toasted to second chances, to new beginnings, to the courage to admit mistakes and the determination to do better. He toasted to Marina, who had entered their lives as a professional and became the heart of the family. He toasted to Isabella, who had overcome unimaginable traumas and emerged as a strong and compassionate young woman. He toasted to Sophia, whose resilience and joy were constant inspirations. He toasted to Gabriel, who represented the future and all possibilities yet to come. And he toasted to Camilla, who, even absent, remained present in spirit. Everyone raised their glasses, intertwined arms, and made a collective toast to family, to love, to life. And at that moment, in that house in Notting Hill that had witnessed so many transformations, surrounded by the people they loved most in the world, Raphael and Marina knew they had achieved the impossible. They had created a true home, a place of safety, acceptance, unconditional love, a place where mistakes could be admitted and forgiven, where pains could be healed, where every person was valued exactly as they were. The years continued to pass, as they always do, bringing inevitable changes. Isabella eventually left for university, but remained close, visiting frequently, always feeling that she had a home to return to. Sophia pursued her artistic path with passion and talent. Gabriel grew up surrounded by two protective sisters and dedicated parents, becoming a balanced and gentle young man. The house in Notting Hill aged gracefully, its walls holding decades of happy memories. The garden grew and expanded, with Raphael and Marina planting a new tree for each important family milestone. Raphael never returned to his frantic pace of work from before. He discovered that true success is not measured in professional achievements, but in cultivated relationships, in shared love, in positively impacted lives. Marina continued to be the pillar of strength and love for the family, the person who kept everyone united, who reminded everyone of the importance of being present, of listening, of loving unconditionally. Her decision years ago to accept the challenge of caring for two traumatized children and a lost father had transformed not only their lives, but her own. She had found purpose, love, family. And so over the years, that family that had been broken and rebuilt became a living testament that no mistake is too big to be corrected, no trauma is too deep to be healed, no situation is too desperate to be transformed. With love, dedication, humility, and above all presence, miracles happen. Families rebuild themselves, wounds heal. Hope is reborn. Raphael, now entering his 60s, often sat on the same garden bench where he had spent countless afternoons, reflecting on the journey. From a lost and desperate executive, he had become a present and fulfilled father. From a man who almost destroyed his daughters through neglect, he had become someone who helped them become strong and happy women. From a heart closed by pain and guilt, he had become a heart open to love, vulnerability, gratitude. And when he looked at Marina, still as beautiful as the day he met her, when he saw his grown daughters still visiting regularly, when he played with the eventual grandchildren who would come, when he felt the warmth of the sun on his face and heard the birds singing in the trees they themselves planted, Raphael knew. He knew he had found what truly matters, not at the top of a corporate empire, but on the ground of a garden, surrounded by those he loves and those who love him. Raphael Alistair's story is not a story of perfection. It is a story of failures, of terrible mistakes, of painful consequences. But it is also a story of redemption, of second chances seized, of love that overcomes everything. It is a story that proves it is never too late to make the right choice, to prioritize what matters, to build what was destroyed. And above all, it is a story about the transformative power of true love, not the romantic love of fairy tales, but real, imperfect love, which manifests in daily presence, in consistent choices, in unwavering dedication. The love that does not give up no matter how difficult the path. The love that heals, that rebuilds, that redeems. That family formed by broken parts that united to create something stronger than the sum of its parts is proof that miracles exist. Not divine miracles that fall from the sky, but human miracles, built day after day with hard work, infinite patience, and above all, unconditional love. And as the sun sets over the house in Notting Hill, illuminating the garden with golden hues, as laughter echoes from the open windows, as a family gathers for another dinner together, the story of Raphael, Marina, Isabella, Sophia, and Gabriel continues, not as a story with a definitive end, but as a continuous journey of love, growth, and gratitude for the second chance that life gave them. A second chance they did not waste. A second chance they transformed into a full, meaningful, profoundly happy life. A second chance that proves, to anyone who needs to hear, that it is never too late to start over. Never too late to do better. Never too late to choose love. The end of the story. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Raphael, Marina, Isabella, Sophia, and Gabriel has deeply touched your heart. If you were moved by this journey of overcoming, redemption, and true love, please like this video, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any stories, and tell us in the comments which moment affected you most. Was it Raphael's courage in removing the girls from that situation? Was it Marina's arrival bringing hope? Was it the children's transformation? We want to know what you felt. Every day we bring intense stories like this, which reveal the deepest side of the human soul, showing that there is always hope, always a possibility for a new beginning. Life can break us, but it can also rebuild us stronger. We look forward to seeing you in the next episode with another story that will stir your emotions. See you soon.